Hello and welcome everybody to this show. And we welcome everybody, physical and non-physical, to this show. And my name is Alexis Sersha, and I'm co-hosting today with my dear friend Muriel Shinkman. And
Hi.
hello everyone. And first, I apologize if I'm going to be looking a little bit at all the technology for a bit. So just to making sure that everything is ticked, everything is pressed. And I've been looking forward to this show, and I've been looking forward to today. And hello, Muriel.
Hello.
Over on to you.
Yes, thank you, Alexis, for opening up the space today.
You're welcome.
Very excited about this.
Yes, I know we had a beautiful chat yesterday, quite a few hours in preparation to this, and we decided that we're only going to pre-plan like first 5 minutes, and then let's see what happens, and let's see who comes, and let's see who of the physical and non-physical will join us at this table. And I can feel the presence of so many already. Our global audience and also our galactic universal audience. And as we discussed yesterday, Muriel, you're going to do a little bit of introduction, and then we will go right into the show.
Yeah, sounds good, Alexis. Again, thank you so much for doing this, providing the space so that we can all come in. And again, the name of this is Around the Table with the Modern Magi, and it's around a table. So it's not like Alexis and I are up on a stage or a podium and we're teaching everybody. We're not doing any of that. We're around the table as we're all equals here. No, there's no chosen ones. We all work very closely with the highest of vibrations, and we've been doing that ever since. This knowing is coming into being, and those present right now know everything that is going to be discussed here and know everything that I just said already. So with all that being said, welcome everybody for joining us, and thank you for giving your energy, because basically it would just be another conversation like Alexis and I had yesterday for good 2 solid hours. That was awesome. We had a really good connection going on. So much was said. So much could have been said. Like, we could have gone on for another good 5 hours at least.
And that's every time, like the two of us, and I don't mean you and I, Muriel, but the two of us, at least two of us who are involved, who are awakened, who are aware. It just amazing stuff happens when we're together, when we're having conversation together, whether that's in written form, like on Facebook chat, or whether that's on Skype or phone or anything. It's just quite a different space that we create, isn't it?
It really is. It takes two or more that gather and magic happens, huh?
That's it.
And I love the flowers display that you have right there.
Thank you.
I have my door over here. The camera's kind of angled, but anyway, I have a nice bright colored shirt for a reason.
And isn't it amazing that you also got this red going on? Look at my earrings, and
yes,
see, I've got a red sort of thing going on, and I don't know what it was, but it just it's part of this whole journey, because like I start preparing for the whole week, and it's not that for this kind of shows, because it's quite different than doing things like being myself. Whenever there's a show going on, my body knows, and I look out for things that may be relevant to this show, and what the flowers that I pick seem to pick themselves. So this time it was very much like a red color, and I thought, wow, some white is gonna go along just nicely. So, and you've got a red t-shirt, so I don't know what it is about this red. Maybe it's the fire and the passion.
Well, that's exactly it. You said it perfect, Alexis, because the energies around us, again, we're inviting the archangels to join in conversation, and every single one's present, if not more. And there's more than we even have names for. Again, the names are really irrelevant. That's a human thing that we've done so that we can communicate this way from human to human, and we can kind of have a consensus and understanding with the language. But as you know, how you receive information and those who can convey this information through, we all have our own way of how we understand, how we get it, I guess. With me, it's the colors and the frequencies of color. And when I work with individuals, of course, That's very strong there. But with the orange and the red, I know Gabriel is very present in this conversation. Not that, again, every single one, but very upfront. Muriel, relax. We got you back. Because Muriel tends to be, she performed music for a good 25 years and never got over the stage. Never really liked to have presentations, never really liked to do any of that. So that information was clearly said right before I got onto this call. I have no issues with that anymore. All of that fell away because I realized that I'm not alone. And being the human for so long, I felt like it was just Muriel walking around, and I carried all that nervousness and anxiety of everybody's looking at me. You know, you're like, it's got the camera on you. You kind of get a little bit self-conscious
about it.
Yeah, about all that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I want to say Gabriel is grounding a lot of these energies that if you look at the human body, it's pretty much below the navel down, and it has a lot to do with our sensual and sexual energies that are kind of out of balance. And that's just saying it lightly. And on the planet, it's been that way for a very long time. And it's important to have that lower part of our body grounded. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's not anywhere else, but, you know, you get the point there. It's a strong color. It's got a lot of presence. Again, very grounding. When you think of red and orange, it's just bright. No matter how, if it's bright like this or dull, it's still a very bright color. It gets your attention. Very much
exactly, so. Yeah. And so basically, we're now going to the next section. So welcome again. I think there's quite a few people here now. So I think we may not be waiting for anybody anymore. And hello and greetings, everyone. And we are Michael, and we are Michaela. And we want to show you, and we demonstrate over and over just how easy this transition is from the human to the soul self to the eternal self. These are the times, dear ones, where these things are easy, where these things are so joyful, where you can laugh and dance, and we can dance together and be with you with all these energies, with all these challenging energies. And we know that the energies have been so intense with what's happening on the planetary level and what's happening in the universal level. And we want to tell you, dear ones, that you are cherished, you are brave beyond measure, and we bow before you, and we love you, and we dance with you, and we hug you. And here we are, we want to take you on a journey because we feel that we are still not complete at this round table. And we are in so much joy to be with you in this way at this round table and to dance with you in this ease where the human and the soul just dance and step forward and step back. And there's no need to introduce ourselves. In our daily lives, when we do this, we don't introduce ourselves. We don't do any deep breathing anymore. We don't have to do any particular ritual. We just are, and we just adapt to whatever's happening in life. And now we want to sort of ask you to come here, to breathe deeply, and freely. And we want to take you on a little journey because we want to bring more of you to here, to right at this table, so that we can all communicate, so that we can all rejoice. And breathe deeply and feel your body in this moment. And feel your legs, feel your feet touching this beautiful earth. Feel it, feel how you're grounding yourself. And let your awareness flow all over your body. Feel your torso, feel your feet, feel your arms, feel your eyes, feel your ears. And feel how the air is touching you and how it's going freely into your lungs and how it's dancing with you. And when you are right here, right now, allow the time, be aware of the time, allow the time and space to start flowing through you. It has been flowing through you this whole time, but just bring your awareness to this and allow it to flow through you because, dear ones, as you know, you don't have to move anywhere. Life is flowing through you, and let's ask the past to come through and all the past lives and all the many thousands of lives that we have lived. Let them flow through you and bring them to the table. And we allow more time, and we feel it, and we touch it, and we sense it, and we dance with it as it flows through us, the past. And we go right into the earth. Before there was any life on earth, we were. And then we go even before there was earth, this rock in this space, we were, you were. And then we allow more time to pass, and we dance with the time, and we dance with space, because they are friends. And yet still we were. And we were in universes, and we were in different planets. And yet still we were the ancient ones. We always were, we always will be, and we always are in the now moment. And we traverse the space, and we traverse the void, and we traverse all the time. And we are also outside of time. We are outside of space. And yet still we are, and yet still we were. And we let more time pass until we come to everything, and until we come to nothing. And we come to I am that I am. And we feel, and you feel yourself as that. Allow yourself to be that. Allow yourself to be all and nothing. And then the masters that we are, we reverse the time, and we allow it to go forward and still flow through us. And we feel the joy of creation, and we feel the joy of creating the universes, the worlds, the planets, the nebulas, the stars. And we didn't know what we were doing. We were just so joyful to be creating. And still we were the ancient ones. And still we are in the now moment. And we breathe in this time and space, and we keep creating, and we create this rock, this earth. And we create life, and we see it, and we dance as it flows and grows and dances on this rock. And it breathes in life, and it allows life to flow through it. Allows oxygen to flow through it. And you see all of the myriads and millions and trillions and billions of species of life. And then you see the birth of a human. And then you feel yourself as you dance through all so many lifetimes, all so many roles that you played. And yet still you've been the ancient one. You've been always, and you are, and always will be. And we come to this life now, and we are still open. We are open to all the parts of you. We are open to all the angelic beings. We are open to all of them to touch us, to dance with us, to be us, to be our friends, to be our brothers, to be our sisters, to be around this table. And just notice and feel just how much of yourself, the multidimensional self that you are, that you bring to this table, including this cherished human self in the human body, the spirit walking in the human body. And you allow yourself even the future lives to come, your master, the master that you are, the embodied master that you are, that you're allowing yourself to walk this earth. And remember, dear ones, this is who you are, this is what you bring to this table. And as you look in the mirror, you see yourself, and you see just one person, and yet you are this multidimensional, multifaceted being, a being that is part of everything, a part of nothing, a part of what was, is, and forever will be. So when you look at all these energies, and when you feel the energies of today, the challenging energies, and you do this journey, and you will see how everyday life will become small. Not insignificant, dear ones, because it is extremely significant every moment, every second. But you, the master, the ancient one, the one who's always been, when you take this perspective, how easy it is to deal with everything, how easy, how small the problems become, they just become experiences. They are not something that overwhelm you, it's just life flowing through you, and you allow it. You allow, dear ones, you allow everything to flow through you. You don't identify with it, you just allow it, and you love yourself, always love and cherish, just as we cherish you. And now we come back to this space, and over to you, dear Muriel.
That was beautiful. Thank you. We forget when we're in this body, we forget that we're so big. Many of us just on the everyday presence of the being in a body. We forget how very big we are, how multidimensional we are, and it's easy to get lost, especially nowadays. And what you said, problems, when they're very insignificant to the long run, to the stars. Right.
Well, it just depends, like, it just depends what perspective you take. So I find that that I always now have this ability to see myself as a multidimensional being, to perceive myself as a multidimensional being. So it's kind of like I put on different mantles, so to speak. So for example, like if I go and be with people of the mind, as I call, I don't know how we refer to people, ordinary people that are still in their mind, that have not awakened. I can put on the mantle of the mind people, as I call them, and I can be with them, I can relate with them, and yet and I can see the walls that they create, and I can see all the up to where they go. They live in this small, tiny little box, the tiny little room, compared to the spaces, the vastness of existence. But I'm not trapped in there. And I don't sort of feel like I have to prove to them anything. I don't even have to reveal myself. I don't even have to explain anything. I just be with them. And yet they can feel there is something different about me. And this is what I think is what is meant to be in this world, but not of it, because none of the limitations, none of the walls of this world are a problem for me, because so much of me actually exists outside. And all I do is then take that mantle off, and I take on a perspective, let's say, of myself as a soul, of myself as an eternal self, or even, if I want to, any other role that I want to play. Because if I have underneath that awareness, I am that I am, and we are that we are, meaning that I am so many multitudes that are touching me, that are experiencing through me, then it's a very, very different way of walking. Like a fear doesn't have space anymore in my life, even though as a human self does sometimes feel fear, and I can feel fear around me, but it's not mine. I don't take it on. And yet from the human self perspective, the human self is always learning, is always expanding. And that's the joy of dancing with the soul self, because it's like an internal teacher. We talked about that yesterday, isn't it? Like, it's like an internal teacher. There's a part that is always teaching, and then there's a part.
So it's coaching, giving you a little advice there. It just has the answers, doesn't has the questions. The brain has the questions.
That's right. Yeah. And that part, the eternal self, is very happy to work with the brain. It's not like an enemy. So, and I wanted to ask you, Muriel, because you feel yourself that you are of the Metatron family, and how do you perceive in everyday life? How do you experience that? And what are some of the challenges that you would like to share with us today?
Well, Metatron is a strong force, and when it comes through, it's you can't say him, because it's not a he or she.
Right, yes.
It's more, if you want to think about it, it's more of like a we, an us, a them.
That's right.
And so, because the integration happened, Muriel has her daily life and her mind, and they have her human things, but when the force comes through, it's just it's like a freight train running really fast. It's like a lot of information. It's a lot of information at once, and it's like it never stops like this, and it just keeps going and just keeps going like this, and there's no pause, and it just goes like that. It's really like that. And so my brain has to stop, really take a back seat in order to gather the information. But the Metatron energies is, you could say, creates energetic platforms where physicality can play itself out. And what it means by that, and I know people on this show right now understand, and they've heard the term Metatron's cube. And within that is literally, there's 13 circles, 1 in the center and the 12 on the outskirts. And you can fit all of the platonic solids within that. This isn't a science class at all or anything, but I know that those on this understand that, at least up to that point. And they're really just platforms. Like, you have like a circle, and a circle is a structure, and only so much can take place within a circle. And so when it comes to, of course, this is a bit different. These are 2 triangles on top of each other. But when you have a triangle, it changes. So the circle, there's different things that play out within a circle than on a triangle. So you get the point there. And so to make it easy, you take the four elements. Fire can't be water, and water can't be air. Air can't be earth. They have their own structures in order to play out their physicality. Now, that doesn't mean they can't cross over, because it can, like fire can get so intense where it becomes like liquid or it becomes cold almost, right? So, because that's the interconnectionness of everything. But to keep it simple, basically Metatron sets up platforms for physicality to be able to experience itself. Very simple there. I did get an incoming message last night at 3 a.m. That was the freight train that came running right through my bedroom.
I woke up at like 2 or 3 as well. I didn't sleep, and I decided this morning, look, I'm going to have to do something about it because I want my sleep nights back. But anyway.
It's intense. There's a lot, Alexis, that we do here, and I want to let people know, what it takes for us to be able to do something like this. We do open up the space for everybody. We're kind of space holders, not teachers, and I'm glad we addressed that yesterday because, again, we're around the table now. We all came here.
That's right. And all of the people
make it very real.
And all of the people that are participating have been, doing this for a very, very long time. So it's not like we can sort of talk something new. But I think it's like when we discuss things, it's like the space is open, when we gather, isn't it? And we all have such a little bit of different experiences. And what was amazing, because you have a very strong, let's say, history in shamanism. And I have a little bit different history. And yet what we notice is that basically we're just sometimes using different words for the same thing. And what was so apparent yesterday when you talked about and explained the Pachamama, which is the South American shaman term for what I call, and I've realized then I call that eternal self, but the way you explained that was what I experienced as eternal self. So basically all of these different traditions doing the same thing is just getting there with a little bit of a different, but we're talking about the free-flowing traditions, not even, not the rigid religious sort of traditions that are meant to entrap, but I mean within all of these circles there are some free-flowing traditions that allow people to sort of get out of the mind, to get out of the trap of being a singular mind-based being, basically.
Mm-hmm. That the earth is not just a single organism. Before, it was known that the earth is a rock. With science took over, but the cosmology of a lot of these cultures knew that it was more than that. And in the Ashwa, and the Quechuan word for that is Pachamama, meaning Mother Earth, but also there's many worlds here. And it's not just one world, below the ground. There's many that exist here in one. So you could say Gaia is a lot like the human being, where there's Gaia, but then there's many dimensions of Gaia. So like us, there's Muriel, there's Alexis, but we have the many aspects of our lifetimes. And then also the I am, who never left, working with the archangels. And then we have that buffer in between, what we call the higher self. And there's all these different terminologies, but really when you get it basic, it's the multidimensionality of the being called the earth.
And the words can't even explain, and you were talking about this, how it's the internal world of a person that it's not, that goes into, how did you explain it? That goes into the stars. That's like from a shamanistic perspective. How did you?
Yeah, so science thinks that there's a core of the earth, and that there's molten lava there. There's the core, and that's it. But really, it's kind of like the Alice in Wonderland story, where she gets real small when she takes that one mushroom or that one thing. It gets her tiny in order to get through the door. Well, you have to get real tiny in order to go through the earth, and then once you get through that center of the earth, you come out to outer space and on the constellations, and everything that is outside the earth is also inside the earth, and it just continues on like this forever, kind of like a fractal. Many people know what a fractal is, just a larger, smaller version of itself. And so the earth is not this rock. It's more of it's a very translucent, ethereal type of place, a structure where again, where physicality can play itself out. Also, I want to say too, this place, many beings come route of Earth. From all of creation, it's not just this galaxy or the universe or universes, it's all of creation to come here to ascend, as you will, to get back to the divine knowing of who we are. Before all this distortions happened with creation, where you had the dark and the light, and that's when the Order of the Ark was formed and all that. You know, Alexis, I do have something to read. I don't know if you want me to read it or just put it up for later, and then I can put it up for other people and they can read it later on. That's up to you, because I do talk a little bit about this. We don't have to, because it will take up a little more time. But I talk about that.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Because I did have an incoming message from Metatron. That was what got me up at 3 a.m. And it was, again, that freight train. And I just had to get this down. Of course, I don't have the skills yet to memorize this. I don't have a photographic memory where I could just sit there and stare at the screen right now and tell you all, but I do have it in front of me. And I can read it real quickly. But again, okay, so the following message is to open the space here and to assist in bringing the energetics to the table. And those joining us understand all of what is being said. And again, this is a disclaimer. This is only to open up the space for our party here. So thank you for listening to this. Again, this will be up for others to see. It's on my blog, and then I'll share it into the event page here too. Humanity is walking a path that has never been walked before. And those who have chosen to align themselves with this understanding are paving the way for others to follow when they are ready. We're making this very real and grounding this energetics on the planet for the very first time. This has never happened before. Not like this. You take a good deep breath with that. And there are those who have always known within themselves about this truth of all that is and can stand in solidarity with others who are considered brave enough to walk this path at this time on Earth. There's a small percentage of these individuals who are truly doing this work. The energetics now available on the planet have opened a new platform for all of humanity to now come out and express this. But not all doing the work. They appear to be, but that is because the platform is now available for them to do so and are able to express in an effortless way. All of us can play with paints, but not all can make pictures stand out for others to see a clear definition of the expression. Art imitates life, so we all can recreate what already has been done. Then there are those paving a completely new path, like the pioneers coming to a new land. They clear the rocks and boulders out of the way. Perhaps there are small bushes or trees in the way. They move these aside so that the path becomes clearer for others to walk smoothly along without having to stop every few feet to avoid the bumps on the trail. Muriel has a metaphor to explain this as she understands from a personal experience. There is a path that runs up from the foothills of Colorado Springs in Colorado and winds up around the mountains, along with the Ute Indians are called Tata, the Mountain of the Sun, or more well known as Pikes Peak is what the Europeans had renamed it. This path was known as Ute Pass. Because the Indians had cleared the way up to the mountain, they could migrate back and forth from the plains into the mountains. When the European settlers came to the region, they had removed the Indians from the land and sort of cleared their own path and renamed what had already been cleared by the Ute people, paved it with concrete, and is now known as Highway 24. This is only an example of what we are talking about when we bring up this understanding of being the first ones to clear the way for others to follow. There are many more metaphors being mentioned here, but we will stick with the original reason for all this being said. So, with this knowing, we can clearly see what humanity is ready to bring, what has already been known at the heart center of everyone down here on Earth for the very first time as a group. No longer one, two or here or there, but many will follow. This isn't an easy path, for it is difficult to move some of these tough boulders out of the way. And many will find it too much to handle and drop out, in quotations, however that looks to the individual, either by not going any further at this time and they leave the road for an easier existence, or perhaps they will leave it altogether. They'll leave their body because it is simply too difficult to let go of that baggage they've been carrying for too long. This could be ancestral inherited weight, or perhaps the many aspects they have created and cannot integrate those into the physical body during this shift. They will leave and take another body and do it again later when the energetics are freed for them to do so. It is those who are clearing the energetics to make the trip easier for the individuals when they feel ready to do so. Humanity will be grounding the light frequencies from the original source creation into the new platforms available on Earth. This is the mission. As all of creation has moved up in frequency, billions of years of cycles had recently come to an end and started anew. It wasn't just the cycles of what many had known as the Mayan calendar. For instance, with their 26,000-year cycle. No, many cycles have just come to pass and starting a completely new way. Even the archangels have moved frequency-wise up to a whole new level that has never been done before. The creation story, and that's exactly what it is, a story, has many renditions to it according to the individual's understanding of their own confine. However, there's a universal truth to what took place at the early stages before what we knew as the universe or any of the universes were ever created. There was only source light, no other, or duality. Creator wanted to see itself and created another. This would be what you would see as two concentric circles. And again, I have a visual, two concentric circles. Creator with the dot in the center said, ooh, I want to see myself, and created itself. As creation started to look back at itself, it created a little more in this fashion until there was more of itself to see itself. But there was still a play with only the white light of all that is. There was more that was being done, and this went on. Creator, in a sense, created what we know as the rays of creation. These rays can be likened to what your rainbow looks like. All the individual colors, the red, the orange, the yellow, the green, blue, purple, indigo, and so on. There's many shades that go off of this. And the various ranges of these colors were beginning to be played with. As this went on, creation itself, with itself, started to create more and more creation, creating creators from the source's creation. After a while, these creators started creating creators, and they started creating creator beings, and then they started creating creator beings, and this went on for a very long time. But they were beginning to create within their own light instead of the original source light. As this occurred, distortions were created throughout what you call time and space, and these distortions were being made from less and less of a source's original light. What your churches or religions call the darkness are what we are talking about here. But these were misconstrued with the mental concepts of what was perceived as the light and the dark. There were no bad guys, ever. No one did anything wrong. There were no angels that fell from grace. There was no having to save anyone. This all came from the minds of those who believed in good and bad. This was the trick of falling from grace, or better said, the outcome from creating less and less from the original source light. Again, no one did anything wrong. Creation was expanding so quickly at a rate that none of the creators could get a handle on, so to speak. So there was a consensus to create what you know as the order of the arc. And this gave creation the opportunity to bring the light and distortions and dark together as a way to bring up creation to its original frequency. Metatron created what you call the third dimension, so that Earth wouldn't fall anymore in consciousness. As the people who came out of this world brought the distortions with them, this created a fall of consciousness for the planet as well. It was not the other way around. This new platform called a net. So there was no more distortions being created. This is what many of you know as the Atlantean dream. This is what you began so very long ago, but at the time did not have the energetic platform to carry out this operation to its full capacity. It took a little while in time and space for this manifestation to occur. Many of you, those who joined the space, were the ones working closely with Metatron and many of the archangels, alongside as a solid team to bring these frequencies here for the success of this divine intervention. Those of you hearing those words were working alongside for many lifetimes to anchor this firmly here on Earth. It was a prime directive to do this. As many worlds exist here, even though it appears that there is one solid planet you call Earth. There are many people, or what you call tribes, who have always had this understanding. It was not until the fall of man or the fall of consciousness when the remembering fell away. Many of these individuals who know of this understanding of worlds within worlds have always kept this at the heart center of their daily living. They never left the heart, or better said, they never missed a beat of the knowing of this divinity within each person. The animals, the plants, the trees, rivers, the oceans, the aerobics, the non-aerobics never needed to have an understanding. For them, it is simply known. As mankind fell more into their own creations, they fell asleep into a sort of amnesic state of being and began to see all life in this way. This falls into the old saying, we don't see others how they are, we see them how we are. It was a simple projection of their own dream state or the trance they fell under. Thank you for spending this time with us. I am Metatron and work with you in solidarity to ground this understanding into the hearts and minds of all who are ready. Many blessings, and thank you, Mira.
Thank you, Metatron. Wow, it is quite amazing to all the different subtleties of energy. Like I can feel the Metatron in you, and it's like very much like you said, a building. I can see the structures and the triangles and the circles, and very powerful energy, and almost like mathematical, scientific.
It is. It's an intelligence. It's more like you say the archangels. Like they work differently. They have a different feel. Like you taste, smell. They have a different, because we have 5 senses here, but there's so many without the form, and how they work. Metatron, like you said, is very. You would say intellectual of all the archangels, right? But that doesn't mean that it's not a heart-centered thing. So it's
no.
because Metatron is like an accumulation of all the archangels. You could say that he is them are the overseers of all, but not captain, because there's no better, no worse. There's no one above, because it's around the table. But it's the very beings that create the platforms for everything to work, play itself out in physicality. So in a sense, yes, it's very an intellectual type of understanding, but you don't need to have the mind like that. And I know people listening understand all those words that were being said, but you don't need to see it with the mind. You don't need to hear that.
No. And you don't need, the mind doesn't need to understand, it never will understand. And, referring back to the, and you've beautifully, Metatron has beautifully explained our journey. And I could feel our journey. And it's interesting that we also had like an initial meditation, if you call it, into that journey as well. So we had two experiences over that. And I think maybe what they're saying is that it is really time to have that awareness of your own self, of your multitudes of self all the time. It really is time to carry that, wherever you go, wherever you be, whatever you're doing, it is time to carry that overview, to carry your own self-presence, to carry your own spiritual center. And like we talked about the Pachamama, you explained beautifully as well about, this, when you go into the center of the earth and it opens, it's not like you come to the end of the hole. It's actually, it's like a light at the end of the tunnel, rather, where all of the universes actually begin. And this is how I experience my inner world, like the eternal self. When people ask, so how do you experience this? It is this, I don't actually have the bottom anymore. And for me, all of this, if I should call it energy, I don't know what word to use, it does come from the ground. And I sort of had a conversation about this, that people do experience it in a different way. So whether that was because there was, let's say, like that 2 triangles that you show, the Merkaba, the males have this way, the triangle, the predominant triangle, and the females in the current female body are down. So I had to sort of, as a female, having majority of male teachers, and not that they're doing anything wrong at all, but it's just that they're currently in the male body. I had to sort of always step out and look at what and how I experience things. And for me, it is coming always through the feet, from my feet, that where the energy and the awareness first comes. So when I sort of feel that rush, it's not from, normally, traditionally, you're taught that it all comes from up here. Mine was the way around. So, and if I sort of tried to follow, because initially I tried to follow this, and I thought, oh, I must be doing something wrong. And then you just realize, like, hang on, you just have to always follow your own. And even if you are the only person that is doing it, if it's working for you, then that's it. But it's the same, like, the way I experience myself now is that I don't actually have any bottom. So, when I feel myself inside, there is always, like, I don't always allow, like my human self, I'm talking as a human self now, I don't always allow this awareness, like, for example, let's say if I'm walking in a city, it sort of fluctuates. But in a millisecond, as soon as I'm aware of it, I just I notice it. and that's where the entrance to the world is. That's where the source of my own being is, and that's where the source of all my self-love, all of that comes from. So that part is always open, and it's this that is allowing me to, be sovereign, to become sovereign, to be sovereign more and more, because it's a constant expansion, and it's a constant understanding in new ways of sovereignty in relationship to everything, whether it is to your spiritual family, whether it is to your to everything in the world, whether it is the internal, how you relate, how I relate to internal parts, how I relate to humanity, how I relate to, other being, animals, creatures. So it's a constant expansion of this sovereignty. And I was just when I sort of was tossing around in my bed, this is what I was sort of thinking about, and getting some more understanding about how this sovereignty actually, because I used to never really know. I always wanted to be independent even before I knew, that soul really existed, but I never knew what this sovereignty really does. And what it does, it is creating space. This is what it does. It creates space in between worlds. And so it's not like that the earth has got so many worlds. It's just that being more and more sovereign and creating that sovereignty in relationship to everything, I create space. And in that space, there's more choice, there's more movement. We don't, for example, like what happened in the past, and this is like a galactic story, it's not just a human story, is where we had to, because we were so squashed together, we didn't know sovereignty, we weren't embodying sovereignty, and that was before we even had bodies. We were so squashed together that we could feel other people, other beings, other parts of all that is, that were doing other differently, that were choosing differently. And then because that was irritating us so much, because there was no space in between us, we went into battles and tried to make them also be like us, think like us, so like you said, this dark and light, it was this constant battle to try to get the others also to be like us, but this is not actually happening. So the solution, this has never happened. Neither side was able to win. So the solution, the sovereignty really is solution, because it is creating space. So I was thinking, even with the choices that humanity is making, or different stratas of humanity, different parts of humanity, like we talked, some people are choosing to have like the Blade Runner future. And I'm clearly not choosing that, to live in that kind of urban way with no trees, no animals, because everything has been
virtual reality that mimics everything around them.
That's right. Yeah. And to support that virtual reality, everything else has been destroyed. Like you said, everything's been made in concrete. But some people, in people that I meet at my project now, young people, this is what they're choosing. This is what they want. This is actually what is giving them joy. So for me, this sovereignty is in every situation. The ability is building, not building, but creating or allowing and practicing my ability to create space between us, so that I'm not in a position where I'm trying to force them, and they're in a position to play out their choices, because like me, they have eternal self, they're eternals, they are absolutely the same as me. And I don't have to choose their reality, but because up to now, in this singular way that we were, what others were choosing was always affecting others. For example, let's say you talked about American Indians, for example, let's say, and what happened was they chose to sort of, perhaps, or Aboriginal people, live in a more peaceful way. They didn't choose, arms race, blah, blah, blah. And yet they weren't able to sustain that, because others came and, attacked and invaded and took their land away. So these are all of the issues that, as humanity, or in a galactic way, that we've had problems since the time where, like you said, the source has split itself into myriads of free kind of individuals that have different choices, that have different desires. So sovereignty really is the key, because of it creates, and I notice within myself, I'm so much more spacious now. So even the parts of myself, whether they're the wounded part, whether they're the angry parts, whether they're the joyful parts, they all have space. In the vastness of me, they all have space to be. So me as an awareness, I can always sort of step between these different lists. So for example, I can feel intense anger, and yet I am able to step into part that is completely peaceful, because there is space. You know, we're not all squashed so that you can't tell who's who and what's, do you see what I mean? So that one part's current experience overflows into another. It's not anymore like that, because that sovereignty, you know, creates space, so that this one can be angry as long as it chooses to be angry, and this one at the same time, wow, I'm enjoying peace. And me as an awareness, I can step between them, you know, or I can even step in the space between and observe them, you know, because like I am, then I'm all and nothing as well. So that's what it was such like this sovereignty is just, I constantly get these new ways of understanding it. And what is making me excited is that how much more I can do with this.
Yeah, you know, and that Metatron, again, that the whole new energetics available has a lot to do with the neutral energies available. Before, it was, you know, the whole good and bad, and it was like really bad or really good. But now there's that neutrality. And you could say instead of our reactionary modes of aim, ready, shoot, like you say something to me and then I backfire to you immediately without even saying it, because as soon as you say, hey, Meryl, this, I don't like your hair, I don't like your face, and I'm like, oh yeah, bam, I don't even stop to think. Well, this new neutral energy is making us available where we can stop, choose, and then act. So we can observe it and then act. So before, it wasn't like that. Before, it was just a quick get back. With the ego, would just immediately try to fight. That fight was there. Now, duality is kind of doubled itself. That's why I have to say it really blatantly there, because it looks like history is repeating itself more than it ever has. Because you look at politics, you look at the media a little bit, you look what's going on in the world, and people are going, nothing's changed. It's actually, we feel like we're like going back in time. Well, yeah, because what happened is that duality has doubled into the quad. Instead of 2, there's 4. So that means that everything is twice as much, the good and the bad, but then you have that neutral energy. And that's the new platform that we all created with Metatron. And I also want to say they're ecstatic. They are ecstatic. When I was reading this, I have a hard time towards the end. I was shedding tears. I had to hold them back because I really, from neural perspective, I can't believe that this is happening. I mean, sometimes I have to hold it back because it's such a heart-centered thing. It doesn't come at all from the brain. The feeling is so overwhelming sometimes. I just want to break down in tears and cry like a little girl sometimes because I can't believe it. Yeah. And so they want us to know that they're so ecstatic that how fast we're doing this. And because if it wasn't for us, this wouldn't be taking place. So those on this call, we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't even know how important, the bigness, how big you are. And this was the little human that comes in, oh, I'm just a little mortal, and eventually I have my life, and then I'll die, and then whatever happens, maybe there's something, because a lot of us, even if we have beliefs or what, most of us think that we just kind of, there's blackness and then there's nothing. Really, if you get down and check in with yourself, many people have a fear. That's the mind. Because it's just it can only work within its own confine. It has nothing else to work with. Literally, the people that aren't choosing this path,
people love the mind.
They're going crazy. They're losing their minds. Yes. Because they don't know anything else. And if they go to, they don't go to people like us because we're the crazy ones. We had talked a little bit about this, Alexis, that we would be clinically diagnosed as psychosis, according to psychologists and psychotherapists, which is funny because most of the healing work that I do psychotherapy, which really I would love to get some of these psychotherapists and think of a psychotherapist and work with them because they battle with their minds. Usually the profession that you go into is the one that you need for yourself. And that's a good reflection for a lot of people to reflect on. So really they need help, but the masses are kind of losing their heads because again, it comes back to the fact that the mind can only figure it out within its own structure. And after that, it just literally shuts down. And then you kind of see, you're seeing this acted out on the world stage right now in many more ways than none.
Yeah, as you were talking about this, like I sort of was getting the message. Basically, I was realizing just how much is still open. You know, all of this, how it's going to play out, is open, and you know, there are so many different predictions, and yet because it's such a volatile time, chaotic time as well. It's all open because at any day different decisions can be made. At the same time, what I find is a lot of people of the mind, which is, you know, people that live within the confines of the mind, I find that they're actually fighting even more against opening themselves up. And I think what is making them run is just because you know, as a society, we haven't learned how to deal with anything, and especially the new generations, you know, the way they deal well, not that they've chosen that, but the adults have, you know, given them the pills, the drugs. So from the very little, they haven't dealt with the intensity of emotions, and this is what's happening at the moment, the intensity of emotions. And this is like, for example, let's say for myself, if I look at myself now and 10 years ago, the intensities of emotions, when you open yourself up and you don't have those blockages, it's sometimes overwhelming. You know, the fire is overwhelming.
It can crush physical matter. You got to be careful.
Yeah. Well, it's not something that I as a human or mind on my own could actually possibly deal with, because it's like that volcano, you know, this kind of creator energies. It's the energies that create worlds, that create universes. So it's not, you know, it's not something, and it can actually destroy, like if you don't. I have seen some of the people that are being damaged, their bodies being damaged by that, you know, because they haven't done the preparation or the steps, you know, because they want to, you know, go too quickly or something. So whatever, you know, but if you are, let's say, someone who just knows the mind and has been taught to consider everything outside of the mind to be a disease, you know, like all of these experiences that we experience in these circles, in the circles of psychology, psychiatry, they medicate against. You know, when people are having experiences that we're having, the awakening experiences, they're considered, you know, mentally imbalanced, basically. So then they get treatment for that to go back into the box very quickly. And the people that if they can, they try to go back into that safe box because it's all they know. And most often they haven't discovered us. They haven't discovered people that are different, because we're not out there. We're not sort of popular. Like even if you look at some kind of blockbuster movies, you know, the other day I looked at one of them, The Mummy or something, and it was so silly. So I just skip through it. But what I sort of look at is how, you know, how the mass consciousness interprets things. And for example, of course, the mummy, this lady, she, of course, the woman, she was the dark one and the evil one. And yet the attributes they gave her, I forgot all of these little attributes they gave her. Oh, that's right. You know, the way they explained her possession was how we explain. It's like someone has read some of our writing when we explain the relationship with the soul, the relationship with the spirit, the relationship with eternal self or master self, but they've actually portrayed that as being possessed by darkness. See what I mean? So the images that people get, and they don't want to deal with this, and it is a challenge. It's not like, it's quite a few years, it's like a decade where everything falls apart, you know, and you go through, I mean, sleepless nights, you lose your jobs, your family. It's not something that is easy to do.
Everything falls apart as what you want to hold together.
Yes. So I'm not surprised that people are not choosing, but not choosing that this has consequences. And unfortunately, you know, the time has come when people like us don't actually have nor inclination, nor patience, nor the desire to live in the world where people that are choosing differently are living. And that's what I'm saying, that you know, in many, especially in the last couple of years, this question for me has come many times, like, you know, in those nights where you're woken up and you get asked the question, are you able to leave half of humanity behind, you know? And as a light worker that I was in the past, this would have been one of my hardest things, was was really hard to choose. And yet the more and more and more I have to choose these, because, you know, people that are choosing differently, we do have a right to create our own worlds that don't involve, that don't include duality and separation. So, you know, we have a right to create that space between us. And then, but then what happens, I find that in a daily life, I meet these people, and I even, you know, we may be friends, we go out for dinner, we like each other, we have some common things. And yet at the same time, I'm aware that, you know, we are creating different paths, different future, even though what does that mean really in a scheme of things when you put yourself in, okay, we exist forever? It doesn't, you know, it's again another story. But these are the choices that we are having to make. And I find this easier and easier and easier, because like you said, all these politics and stuff, all of this for me now is like some kind of world that doesn't exist even. I live in this earth the same, and we meet like this, but there's so much of this stuff doesn't touch my world, everyday life. I don't know what.
And that's what's so funny, because that's the multiple earths you were talking about. Like,
that's right.
There's the old earth and the new earth, but here we are, and we're on the same planet, but yet there's different consciousnesses.
Yes.
There's people that are unconscious of their unconsciousness, and then there's people that are conscious or becoming conscious of their unconsciousness, and then there's ones that are conscious of their consciousness. So you have different stratas of the awakening going on, but we're all on this one planet, you'd say, but it's not. There's many worlds.
Multidimensional, And the thing is that, like you also said, that people sometimes in a shop don't notice you. For me, some people notice me, some don't. You know, it's like some really. Some don't, and you can say that, oh, those are people that are really into still the hierarchical power games. You know, because they just are outside of this dimension.
Well, you know, it's mentioned in the Bible. It's mentioned in Revelations too, about the vanishing, and the people, the vanishing is the ones that have chosen the fifth dimensional consciousness, Christ consciousness, in a sense. No man there, but it's a frequency and energy where you literally will disappear around everybody else, even if you're in the marketplace. Where you had people just run right into you, they don't see you, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't see you there. We have the ability to disappear.
And we do disappear, because we live in a higher vibration and a faster vibration, so they don't see us. So you know, and for us, for each individual, each of us, it's to give ourselves permission to go there, to say goodbye to that, you know. And I think this is individually quite hard, especially if some family members are choosing. And it's always yet to remember that no doors are closed, you know. At any time, people that are choosing are different. At any time, when they choose to do the work, that's all. When they choose and then do the work, the doors are open, you know, to any of the dimensions. There are no locks, there are no keys, there are no nothing. All they have to do is do the work, you know, and that makes it easier. But like you said, also, you know, people of the old, like the American Indians and others, they said, you know, or like the little creatures, like the fairies and stuff, they're like in different realms. And yes, a different vibrational pattern, but they are there. And I find that as I become in a different way, like the nature itself, I call that a lot by that name, it keeps revealing all these secrets. And and I don't even know, have they always been there and I just wasn't noticed, or is that some new thing? Or is it I'm just stepping into this world, you know, as you're safe, as you have a different vibrational way, you get revealed all these things. I remember I was sort of driving through this valley in the outback, like you were talking about your area, you know, because the ancient sites, there's so many here, but you don't see them. So for years I was driving through this amazing valley. I call it Silver Valley. I don't know what its name is, and I haven't seen anything. I just always felt good. And yet then all of a sudden I saw how it had all these amazing, like it had a pyramid hill on one side, then it had this, you know, a waterfall on the other side that from Google looks like a, you know, like a feminine vagina basically. And then it had like a rock that looks like a masculine, penis. There was this tree, and yet I've been driving through this thing.
Alexis, that's filthy.
No, you know what I mean. But see, that's been an ancient. And then when I walked there, I saw these ruins of all these ancient. It's like there was some kind of meeting place. Like here when you walk in the bush, you see a lot of stuff, like the history of what was. It's really been destroyed and it's not revealed, but it's being shown to you, and all of these guardians, rocks that are guardians, and all of a sudden you see a face where before, I could have been walking past this rock for years and just see a rock. Do you know what I mean? So
they've always been there.
That's right. Yeah. So this, this is, it makes it for an exciting day. You never know what it's going to be, what you're going to find.
Well, I want to say that the emotional body of the planet, you consider the fourth dimension. We talk about dimensions, and a lot of people get confused about what dimensions are. They're just structures. It's just structure for physicality to play itself out. Like the Earth, we're in third dimension, and it's limiting. It's it's good or bad. Sun comes up, sun goes down. It's very structural in its own nature. But the fourth dimension is the mind. It's thoughts or things, and whatever you think, it stays around the planet. It circles around, but it goes into the emotional body of the planet. Well, with the planet being up to its original frequency now, it's not withstanding any of that anymore. So all of that is being purged out, and as that occurs, there's climate change. And this is what I want to stress: is that a lot of people don't understand it. There's three things going on. There's a fireball in the sky that's changing. Humans have definitely done some no thank yous and pleases and destroyed ecosystems and destroyed many cycles. And at the same time, it's the fall of consciousness, and all of that mass consciousness of the neediness, the pushiness, the wanting, the not settling, the hunger, the constant hunger, constant longing to be fed. All of that has gone into the emotional body of the planet. That's being purged out. And that is what's creating a lot of the changes in climate. So I want to stress that, because that's kind of coming through me right now. Many of that is it's tied in with the human consciousness. It's not the other way around. It's not like a separate, we're on a planet and it's changing. Well, we are the planet. We are Earth. Every single one of us. I mean, try to jump off the Earth. Go ahead. Good luck. If you can do that, please let me know. Because we are the Earth. So whatever we do, we affect everything else. That's why that whole golden rule, no matter it's cross-cultural, do unto others as you'd have done unto you. Why? Well, because we're all interconnected. So whatever happens, it creates a domino effect.
That's right.
And so there's that three things going on at the same simultaneously that has created a lot. And it hasn't stopped. People are still acting out the hunger.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Consuming, and things are packaged by corporations and all the stuff going on. And there's so much trash and all of that. They're destroying the ecosystems. It's like people have given up. So they're like, whatever, let's have a good time today. And then we have a fireball in the sky that is in a very hot cycle right now. And it will be cooling down in the coming decades. And it's changing fast. You have a lot of things going on the planet right now that it's not being addressed in the media. But when you tap into yourself, because you are the Earth, there's something fishy going on. And there's no pun intended there, because red tide is not something to laugh about. When you have pockets of the oceans that have no oxygen. And so people in these areas are wondering, why is this not being a global epidemic, being said? Like, why isn't the UN coming together? Why aren't all these big political leaders coming together to do something about this? Well, they got to make money, and the machine needs to keep moving. So I don't want to go too much down that further path there, but I have to explain the whole structure of what we're in. But that changed. So literally, the third dimension as we know it has been taken underneath our feet. The rug has been taken underneath our feet. The status quo is being tested like they've never been before. And literally what we consider free will is leaving. What we can get away with is not, we can't do it anymore. And so that's why you have all these people acting out, because they're finding that they go at something and they can't get away with it. And you can apply that across the board from everything that's going on right now. If you don't listen to the news, you can see it around your even immediate families are going into this whole thing. You can't get away with this stuff anymore. And so that's the whole thing about neutrality and that sovereignty of freeing up, because like you said yesterday in conversation, we're not light workers. We've agreed with that with each other. Although those on this call, you can check in with yourself about that. But we help assist in changing consciousness. And so
yes.
we help free up the space around us so that others have the freedom to be who they are.
That's right.
So,
and we're not
people over there want to go and create and do mass shootings.
Right.
Well, why isn't it being stopped? That's because they're in the sovereignty as well. You see, that's the double take of the duality going on, where people are so confused right now because you can't find this information on CNN. You cannot find this information anywhere. They're not talking about it. That's why you and I have chosen to do this in a loving way. To spread the word for others to do it. And who knows, on this call, people may talk to their friends and family and share this information with them too.
No, you go. Yeah. What were you going to say something?
Oh, no, I'm done. I finished.
Yeah. With what there's so many things, all of a sudden when you talk, I'm like, oh, and that's it, and we're moving so fast, which is great. Because we go through so much energy. And with all of that you said, it's also like there's a general where we are in the, the cycle of where we are in the Milky Way also. So if there weren't some of us here that were choosing consciousness, then the humanity wouldn't be here because of where we are, like in the space. In the Milky Way, because the area that we're traveling is also cleansing. The energy has changed. The energy in the area where our solar system is positioned in the Milky Way is very different, and we've never been here before. And with all of that, so that's also affecting, what's happening. And with us bringing consciousness here, like the reason why also there is no future in the old way. We can't go on, even if people are trying to choose to keep going, is like we talked, is because of raising consciousness, everything, all of the creatures, all of the beings around us are also raising their own consciousness. So what I find is that, other creatures are no longer willing to play, to support the low consciousness, because they're also moving. So as we talked about, some animals will move into different dimensions and stuff, but also, there are all of these because of the no respect. Like, let's say in the lower dimensions, there, like for example, let's say where the ancient peoples used to sort of, even they would kill animals and stuff, but they would, do it with rituals and thank and all of that with a level of respect. But the way it is now, of course, this is not happening. And with the awareness, the animal species, like this is what I'm finding when I chat, when I communicate with cows, with pigs, with wild animals, they're just not going to be supporting that anymore. So even for people do stay in the low consciousness, there won't be species there, because the species also are moving on into a higher. They want to be respected. They want different kind of experiences. So they won't have that kind of food support, but that can be sort of changed because, they're sort of like we talked, they're printing the foods and
the new technology is coming.
They're doing it in different technology, and that's again fine, because at least technology, you don't have anyone that is sort of like a victim. But with, like you said, with the with the mass shootings and stuff, people find it really hard still to realize that there aren't any accidents in that those that have been shot, unfortunately, not that it is extremely sad for people to use that, but they're not victims. They are active participants in that dance of a perpetrator and a victim. So it's still that 3D dance that, we're just not, I must say, like, I'm not willing to dance in that anymore. And with the integration, I find with my integration inside, I find that I have parts of myself that, at this stage, because how I'm allowing eternal self, which for me has a name, Mikael. So when I say Mikael, I mean eternal self. And I can be Mikael, and we are Mikael, and here we are at the front. So when Alex does allow us to infuse our consciousness, our awareness into every part of herself, into all of the different aspects, there are some parts of ourselves that choose not to dance with us at this time. They choose to continue to play the game of victim. They choose to continue to play the game of separation. And some parts, we notice that some parts just need an extra time because they have been playing this game for such a long time. So they sort of hang out on a periphery and they observe all the other parts, how easy it is to integrate once they choose. But because we are not into a pushing, we don't push parts to integrate against their will. We do allow, there is space inside of me, there is space inside of Alex to allow those parts to still exist. And there are still some parts that at this time have no intention of integrating with us. And that is okay as well. And this is like on the inside, so it is on the outside. There are some parts that perhaps will in a millennia, who knows how long, maybe never. And that's okay. The sovereignty is allowing each of the parts, just like it's allowing each of the groups of humanity to live within their own little world, their own little creations, their own dimensions, depending on the vibrations that they have and what they're choosing. And this is what creating sovereign worlds means. And it is with great pleasure and with great joy that we are interacting in this. And thanks to you, people, human beings that are walking on this earth, that this is possible, because it is the integration of light and dark that creates new energy, that creates new worlds. Because the old world is the old world of separation, where you do have light and dark. But when the light and dark dance together, when you don't put one on top of the other, where you can accept both of them as equal, and you can see that even the dark has beautiful parts, has its own honesty, has its own integrity, has its own rules. It can, this is the worlds that you can actually then create are the peaceful worlds, and new worlds, a new way of being, where you don't have to push everyone, and at the same time, as a human being, you need to practice then that ability to step aside, to not engage into the drama, because the drama will be around for quite a while. And especially, like you said, with the earth changes, the earth, will keep changing, will keep wanting to expunge all the pollution, all that, all those energies, wants to also be pure and clean and high vibration. So a lot of drama is still happening, but practice being, practice separating, keep practicing switching off that news, disconnecting from family members that are choosing differently. And of course, in a few months' time, in a few years' time, if that family member comes back to you, yes, welcome them back and say, okay, show me. Yes, and if that's what we mean. The doors are not closed. None of these doors have any locks, any door, any walls. It is just depending on the individual and their freedom of choice and their willingness to do the work as to what they experience. And this is how it should be, because who has a right to say what should another person or another being should and shouldn't do?
And that's exactly it. But thank you for mentioning that about the non-integration. Because a lot of people, maybe perhaps on this call, might think that, that's the key word. It's in the mind. It's been very mental. It's been up here. But the embodying, the bringing it into the physical, feeling it, embracing your humanness in all its way, not denying any of it, and what was considered bad by the church that convinced us there was such thing as evil, that there's things that you can't do or you can do. And if you do it right, then maybe you'll get a place in heaven. Even if you weren't Christian or Catholic or any of these religions, somehow they did a really good job on most individuals that think that there's a thing called darkness and evil. It does not exist. It's not real. In fact, I know from firsthand experience working with shamanism and working with death and dying and possession and stuff like that, there is no such thing as haunted houses. There's no such thing as the evil. No, because these beings don't have a body, and they know that we believe in this thing called evil, and they're like, ha, we'll get them good. We'll get really bad and see how we can play this game out and make them think that there's something going on here. They're just playing they're trying to scare you. And so this is because, again, you look at scared, and it's interchangeable, two words, you can bring it into sacred. And that was mentioned not too long ago, and I know people on this or the Shambra know about the whole thing about scared and sacred and how those two words are very closely related there. But there is no such thing as being possessed. Nothing can really do that when you have an awareness. And you'd be surprised how enlightened you actually are when you embrace what you consider the bad parts of being human. I mean, even going to the bathroom would be considered like dark. I mean, it's gotten so bad that you can't even be anything. If you move the wrong way, it's bad. So that's very simple, but to embrace everything you think is bad about you because you look over at someone else and they got their shit together, that's not necessarily the case, because you're more enlightened than you could even imagine. That's freeing yourself up to accepting you and all yourselves and all who you are. And then then you bring it out of the mind and you bring it all from the mind and into the body, all one together. Unity, acting with what you would perceive as the dark and light. But that's just a play, because we're all sparks of the Creator. I mean, we are God too. We are all the magical one. There is no better, no worse. No one's a chosen one.
It's just unique. We're just all unique, and that's to be celebrated. Our own uniqueness and where we're going is more and more and more unique. It's not that we're going to all be the same. That's gone. That's been like, so
and that's it.
Equal.
A lot of people are afraid too that the species disappearing, of the endangerment of species, we're seeing them leave. Well, yeah, because if you look at the planet, it's not really ours anymore. We created this whole thing along with the archangels. We created what we would call nature. And what we consider to be nature, really, if you look at it, it's concrete in cities, metropolises now. It's paved and developments all over the place. They own this place. Literally, the banks own it, the governments own it, the military owns it. So if you look at the world, it's not really ours anymore. Once you let that go, you start realizing you take in and you embody nature itself. It's going with you. And wherever you go for eternity, forever, you have this, and you have it to teach others who didn't walk this path yet. And so you can be the way showers that nature hasn't left. It's part of you. And also I want to say that what's going to happen in the future, I'm giving a little thing away here, is that there's a thing in shamanism called shape-shifting. And, it's known that a shaman can shapeshift from, like, for instance, the typical, from a human to a jaguar right in front of your eyes, and then back to a human again. Well, in the future, humans are going to be able to take up the niches. So like dolphins and whales, they'll go home, leave. But humans will be able to shapeshift into the dolphins and the whales and then come back onto the beach and then be a human again. So it's not like we're not going to be able to see these creatures anymore in the oceans. They'll just be kind of false imitations, if you will. I'm using that really loosely. But humans are the caretakers. We're the ones that are going to be the new entity that's going to be part, that's occupying this space. Even though you have the technology and the artificial intelligence and robots coming about and doing all that, it's all going to work out together.
And I'm also finding now, because this has been like a big issue for me too, because for me personally, Alex, if once nature, because I thought, wow, once the nature is gone and it's all just technology, there's no space for me here because I'm not going to hang around, because it's such an integral part. But I'm finding that with this, and that was quite a worry for me for a while. But I'm finding that because I am a creator, I create this space, I create creatures, so that wherever I am, wherever I go, there's an abundance of life around me. So I don't have to actually worry about these, because and then I listen to some other people and they say, wow, we don't have any nature, any life, but my life is not that. Do you see what I mean? So because each of us create our own reality, we each create our own dimensions and opportunities. So in a dimension where I move, there is an abundance of life. And I keep creating more and more and more and more intimacy with that life. And sometimes even my human is afraid. Like the other day I had, I sort of stopped, I went for a walk. Not afraid, but what I was going to say, that fear sort of goes through, and I have to sort of take a few deep breaths, because some of the things that I experience now I haven't seen them being done before. And the human self sometimes still freaks out. And has to take a few deep breaths. Like the other day, I stopped I was walking around the forest, and I stopped. It was a beautiful view. There was a lake and everything. And then I heard some rustle behind me. And normally it's like little geckos and little little lizards and things that make this noise. And it was actually a snake, and snake was walking, I don't know, crawling, what the word is, but
Slithering, yes.
slithering right towards me. And normally, you know, like when I see a snake, I just stop and I'm not threatening to it. And then we just look at each other and the snake moves away and I move my own way. But this one was actually going towards me. And I walked a bit back and still just going towards me. And I walked a bit back. And then I thought, because my human self was a little bit freaked out. I was like, oh my God, you know, in those few seconds. And then I just breathed it and stopped. And I said, okay, let's say hello. And it just came quite close and then went its own way, you know. So these are the kind of experiences that I'm creating for myself, because it's what I want to experience, is what I, you know, and also I'm always expanding. And it is always where, and it's also my work that I feel my work is to have this intimacy with all the life around me, you know, to break my own barriers and all my prejudices against other species, against other life and stuff. So I find that I'm no longer worried in this way, that my life is not the technological life, because I'm creating my world to be a world of nature. Also a little bit technology, but also a lot of ability to like you said, shape shift and stuff. So I don't need that so much technology to help me with everything. You know, for example, do you know what I mean? So to go in a different way. And this is the world that I'm creating. And I would encourage our guests or everyone listening to also to stop worrying about the world as others are creating, because this is why we, each of us, are here to create our own vision of the world, you know. So, and just back before I forget, going back to the bees, because when I was a light worker also about the bees, you know, this is what used to upset me. And when I thought, okay, then humanity is going to just create like a you know, a little robot bees, and they'll find new ways to do that, which they're doing, and it's just going to be this automated factory, like a big Earth is just going to be this big factory, like what they're changing everything into big factory.
Nanotechnology, yeah.
That's right. So, but from the bee point, then I realized when I sort of became more intimate with the bees, is that it's not that, how can I say, they're not leaving, because you know how a lot of the bees are leaving and have left, and maybe they will, depends, because it's all up in the air. But it's just that they are just choosing, because they are high in a higher vibration, they're just choosing different life, because space creation is a vast place. There are places where their species lives well, you know. It's just that they're leaving the Earth. It's not like they're disappearing from the universe, but it's just that they have, these animals have such high standards of life, and they have high vibration. So the bees themselves, they say, well, we're not going to be going collecting honey from poisoned things. You know, this is just not how we choose to live. Kind of, you know, that kind of mass bee, how can I say, knowledge or wisdom that if you can talk with them, you can communicate with them in the same way as the human and soul self communicate, not with words, but with the feeling, with that feeling. And that actually changed my whole, like, how can I say, it made my life much easier, because when I realized that it's not that we're destroying some species, but it's just, and it also made me realize, you know, the quality that I choose, also the quality of life for myself, that for me also the poisoned places are not placed, they're low kind of places. I don't want them in my life, you see. So I deserve and I choose and I demand from life and I create life to create a healthy, a sensuous, a beautiful, vibrant environment. And this is why we're here to create that, you see. So, and as we create that, this is like a parallel to the world of technology, to the world that the mind people are choosing, you know. And as I said, there is always going to be a door open for people to step from one, you know, from all these different.
That's it, you know, and they're also going to start asking us questions. They're going to start asking the people who know about consciousness, how do you know, what is consciousness?
Right.
How do you know what you know? How did you do what you did? Because they're going to try to get it. Of course, you can't create it. Although in the future, you'll be able to transfer such thing as consciousness. Now, this is something like fantastic for those on this call. Please ask me questions later if you have anything about questions about that.
We haven't mentioned that, but I know that our participants know. If you do have a question, just send us a question now, because we're a little bit over, but I don't think anyone minds.
But again, it's out of time and space. I want to say too, with the changing of the sun. Yeah. The changing of the sun, it's a different spectrum. It's even a different color. It's a different sun. The Hopi Indians had mentioned about that's part of their own cosmology and their prophecy about it being a different sun. Well, that's exactly it. It's even a different color. It's white in its color than yellow, but it's creating a different spectrum. So we're starting to see creatures that have always been here, but we weren't able to see them because we didn't have the appropriate spectrum to see them. And then at the same time, there's new creatures being formed anyway. They're coming into existence. So we're living in some awesome times where not just us experiencing this ability of neutrality and being able to come into our divinity and talk about it like this is awesome, but we're going to see fantastical things that are only talked about in fantasy novels or science fiction novels and movies. And well, where did they all get that ideas from? Well, they tapped into the collective consciousness. I mean, how does all the ideas come to be? But we're actually going to physically experience this. This is why it's so awesome where we're going. If you choose to stay,
having all these mantles, because you can put all these mantles, or some people call it act like this, act like that. Like when we were talking about the limitations before, this is what I wanted to say is how I've sort of opened my world up as a woman also, because like how you have to be polite and everything. And then there was time when I would put on an act all sorts, like a villain, or I would put on an act like a loser, and I would go around town, or I would put on an act as someone really rude. Do you see what I mean? Just to realize that I'm not locked into any of these etiquettes and stuff.
Yes.
And just to express all of this darkness or whatever. And it was a lot of fun, and still is a lot of fun. And as a woman, I find that I do need my darkness, because my darkness keeps me safe. My darkness keeps me not
keeps
safe.
The fire under your feet going.
It's my boundaries, because I'm not politely, if someone is rude, and that's fine if they don't realize, because most people don't realize the boundaries, so they automatically just, but it is, I'm here to tell them, hang on, you have to be a bit more aware. And you have to, if you're an adult and can't read another person's body language, then someone should be rude to you. And just wake up, and people won't be rude to you, because you know what I mean. It's like that people who are aware of boundaries, as if the world is made that we're supposed to be nice and just tolerate everyone else. Oh, they didn't know any better. That's why I'm here, to show you that yes, you have to know a bit better. Next time, know better. Do you see what I mean? So, and it's really a lot of fun to go around. I mean, because you just take all these mantles, and where I was going with this is like, how we were talking about all these technological worlds and this world and the natural world and whatever, because we have all these aspects, integrated aspects that we can put on as a mantle. We can go into, like, for us, none of these worlds will be closed off. Do you see what I mean? Like we, for example, the channeled entities, they come for a couple of, when they do the workshop and stuff, they come down here. We also will be able to go, we can move through all of these dimensions. Let's say if you have a family that was choosing a different way, and they live different life, you can go into there. You can just put a mantle of that person, that sort of vibration.
And that's part of like shape-shifting as well. You can shape-shift the environment.
That's exactly the shape-shifting. Absolutely, it is the shape-shifting. And in the old days, like you said, only shamans could do it, but we are the shamans. We are able to.
Everybody is.
That's right. And everybody is, until they, once they go into that. But we are living that, and we can shape shift into all of these different dimensions. So nothing is close to us, It's just that we may not choose to stay there for a long time, or at all. There's some places I have no wish to go, even though I could. But the energy smells so bad to me in those places. I just have no interest in interacting and playing.
And that's it. It's usually it's about well-being. It's like you can stay in that state of well-being because it's impossible to not be okay. It really is when you really check into it. Even if you're going through the most intense type of pain, emotional or physical, it's impossible to not be okay. And because we're eternal beings, I mean, we're just in this form for as long as we are, and then eventually we move on, and that goes on forever, for eternity.
That's right.
I guess to hear that back to myself, it sounds good. Mira loves to hear that back to herself. Nice little mirror.
It is true, you know. I mean, because I know, like, the biggest thing, like, I could have gone through a night of the most intensest integration, and even my body was withering in pain, like it was so uncomfortable. And then in the second, oh, I'm thirsty, boom, back to normal, all gone. Because when you're working with your eternal self, with your soul self, there's no wounding. You can let all this smelly energy go through you because it doesn't wound. There's no wounding, and you can just, oh yeah, we're done. Okay, oh, I've got my favorite show's on, so we finish now. Oh, you know what I mean?
That's it.
So it's not like it's some kind of staying with you, or and that's the amazing bit. And again, probably maybe you can call that a shape-shifting also. I don't know what. But this
that's what we're shape-shifting all the time. I mean, try to get to your 5-year-old self, 5-year-old Alexis. She's not there. Try to, you know, sometimes we gain weight, sometimes we lose weight. That's shape-shifting. Sometimes we could get a tumor and lose a tumor. That's shape-shifting. So it's just basically the physical body shifting and shaping at any given moment. And that we're constantly doing that because we're in this thing called time and space.
And I think we just
let the light body in. It's going to change everything as we let this, as we have that buffer between the soul or the I am and the higher self and the human. It's making it so that we're bringing that into the carbon and lightening things up. We're literally lightening the load. So that the whole game is changing because we're bringing those frequencies in. We're getting younger. We're reversing the aging process if we so choose to. And there's all sorts of magical things happen because again, this has never been done before, ever, not like this. Just for that, anybody on this call could totally take a good deep breath with that, because to really embody that. I mean, that's fine to know it with the mind, but to just really understand that to the core of your being, that you're doing something that has never been done before. I mean, the sky's the limit, right? I mean, if you think about all this stuff. Do we have any questions, Alexis?
No, I just had a look. We have no questions. So we pretty much good to look an hour and a half. We're pretty much good to finish if that's what it feels like, that we've come to the end of the show. Yeah,
we could again, you and I get together and we could talk like for 5 hours until we drop dead, or until we actually need a good sleep and all that. But you know, I have to say, I don't get tired because we're not taking energy. There's no energy feeding. It's actually, I feel invigorated after this. So that's the difference between talking with somebody that they're taking something from you. I don't feel like that. Even the participants in this, there's no energy.
No, I feel like such beautiful energy because all the attendees, we've all been, as I said, we've all been working on this for a long time, you know, and we're just, you and I just talking to what they're also feeling and wanting to say, you know, and
that's it.
So it's not like there's any difference between us just because you and I are talking here. It's just the technology, you know, that we're just doing it with two people. But what I was going to say with this, like I had 3 hours sleep, you probably too. You know, if 10 years ago I had 3 hours sleep, I would be a total zombie, and often I am. But you know, it's a very, very different thing. And this is the whole thing that also, like you said, you know, the hungry planet, the consumerist planet. Is the people of the mind, because they don't have that Pachamama open, you know, that access to eternal self, where they have this constant source of well-being, constant source of energy, constant source of everything. That's why they have to find it on the outside. And I'm just wondering whether, you know, like let's say give it a couple of decades, because at the moment it still sort of looks a little bit for me, when I think about it, looks a little bit of a fantasy. But even though I've sort of noticed, like, for example, with the foods I'm eating, I'm sort of eating more plant-based. I can't do the heavy meat stuff anymore. But what I'm sort of noticing is much, much less. And yet, like, for example, my weight is sort of staying the same at the moment. But I'm thinking that maybe in 10 or 20 years, as more and more and more of everything is coming through this source to me, I might not even need to eat. Maybe that and will be interesting. But at the moment, that is still very much like a fantasy. So probably that's why I haven't been able to manifest it yet. But it is sort of, I'm starting to think about it. I'm starting to experiment with this, and will be interesting to see.
Yeah, you'd be like a lizard or a snake on the road, just sitting there absorbing the sun's rays, and that's your food for the day. But it seems kind of boring. But to think about what's boredom? Boredom's with the mind. So if this whole like changing of our structure and everything, food again, like you said, is going to be changing along with it. It does seem fantastical. But then again, think back, 10, 20 years ago where you were and where you are right now is just like you never thought that maybe you'd be where you are in your being as far as well-being, because I know you and I have been through a living hell as far as changing. I mean, we went through so many deaths. We thought we were literally physically dying, either coming real close to it or still even experiencing some of the things that you feel like you're sick or something like that. But we're allowing the process because we understand now, we have enough understanding that we're okay. Everything's okay, and everything's on schedule. It's not like we're late or we missed the bell or something, and if we don't do a certain thing, it's not gonna happen. So.
And for me, I must say a big thank you to my body, because, I've not been kind to my body. And yet, like, I haven't been sick for a few years now, like not even a flu.
Not even a cold.
Not even a cold. I can walk, with this little sleep and all of the stuff, the integration. And I can walk the furthest I've ever been able to walk, and I can I can carry all my lenses and cameras and drive forever and hours and, and just come home and whoop, okay, next thing, it's just a very, very, very different kind of way of being. Like, I just can't imagine, and it's not possible, because having this energy, carrying the intensity of your eternal self, carrying the intensity of Mikael and the presence, and when she and he decides to, when the interest, it's like perks up, and the interest sparks and is here in this moment, the presence, and all of a sudden the body responds, every cell responds, and the feelings and all of the sensations, thousands and thousands of sensations. And it's like, for example, when I'm in that space and I'm eating food, it's honestly, it's like thousands and thousands of me are tasting that food. It's like the past lives, the angelic beings, the future lives, they're all tasting, and they each have their own unique taste, perspective. It's like, let's say if you and I are eating something, we may be eating the same thing, and yet you can experience that in that now moment. So to be able to carry that, it's very intense, and yet, I can do it. And Michael always says to me, okay, Alex, yep, you can do it more. Let's go deeper and deeper and deeper. If you want to. And luckily for me, Alex, I'm saying, yeah, let's go.
Right?
And this is like boredom. I mean, what does boredom even mean? Because, it's like so much happening in, like, you're sitting watching the waves, and that's the most biggest entertainment. And it's not because I'm entertained by the waves, just, in the old sense, but because there's so many nuances, so many beings present, so much of me present to be touching, to be tasting, to be feeling. So boredom doesn't exist. All right, I think, Muriel, we're going to have to finish now. So what is there something you have to say to complete?
All I have to say is just what I just did. Now remember your breath. Just take that good deep breath, even in the most whatever times. It does clear a lot for you. So I know people know that. It's a good reminder, and I like to hear myself speak sometimes to ricochet that back to myself like a boomerang. But no, we've touched upon many topics that we could write a book about this whole thing that we were just talking on. But I will share this Metatron's message up, and so people could reread that and really take that apart and do what they want with it. But that's fine.
And there will be a recording available, so I will send you the recording, and I will put on my website as well. So for anybody who wants to re-listen that, it will be available. So yes, thank you everybody for attending.
Yes, and
it's been a wonderful,
thank you.
And thank you, Muriel. It's been wonderful to be co-hosting with you and having this chat. And so we say thank you and goodbye to everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you, Alexis. You take care. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.